To the cloud. Oh, good. We are recording, and welcome Casey and Sarah and Rachel, behavior implementation coaches at Clark Pleasant, practically my backyard. All right, it's 1 o'clock. Clive, start on time, end on time, you think?
Yep, sounds good to me.
All right. So welcome to Advanced Google Tools for Behavior Data and Intervention. So we're talking about personalization, pivot tables, and some deep questions. I am really excited you all are here and just want to thank you for sharing those questions when you registered about behavior trends. What concerns are you seeing, and how are you using data to drive responses to support your students? Those have, we took those answers that you had and kind of tweaked our presentation so that we can incorporate and hopefully hit on a lot of those most common concerns that popped up that came from that. So thank you for sharing that. But if you have anything else to add related to those questions, feel free to pop that in the chat box. Always start with an accessibility promise in our presentations. Those closed captions are on. Our backgrounds have simple, high contrast, real font. You're going to get digital materials. You're going to get the tools that we're showing here today. If you don't already have access to them, you're going to have access to them, as well as a copy of a more advanced version of the tool if that's supported for you. You're going to have lots of opportunities to watch examples. And of course, after you finish watching this and you start thinking, gosh, you know, this was really good. This got me started, but now I want to be able to do this. You have access to my calendar, and we can set up a meeting and sit down and talk about how to best support your students, so long as you're part of our Indiana pre-K-12 public school staff members, because that's how Clive and I met. He went to a session that I did online, much like this, and he started thinking about his situation and how he wanted to support his caseload. And that's how this is his brainchild. So, and probably almost 3 years of work now. So Clive will introduce himself.
Hi, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming to this presentation. My background is not actually in the US, it's in England. Right now I work as a behavior consultant for the Exceptional Children Co-op in Jasper, Indiana, DuBois County, if anybody knows that. My background is in England as a licensed social worker. I did that for 10 years. I also took students who were in university training to be a social worker, and was like a practice teacher, we're called, for the last few years was there. I have a master's degree in education, equal opportunities and diversity, as well as one in social work. Also, I was a past business owner my last 6 years in England before I met my wife, who is a US based. I had a training center where we used to train lots of different people, age groups and so on, who wanted to work with children but needed what's called a no vocational qualifications. In England, they have a system where any job that you have, there is a level of vocational qualifications for it. So you can have a level 1, 2, 3, or 4. 4 is usually for supervisors, 3 is usually the main workers, and then 2 is for assistants, and then 1 is for some jobs which needs that level as well. So that's a system that they have for anybody in any occupation within England. And then the other job that I did, I worked at a university, as you call them, college professors. I was just known as a lecturer or a senior lecturer, and I taught again in that college an advanced education and childcare program for people who wanted to be supervisors, wanted to be in charge, wanted to know what that means in terms of being involved, and they needed a qualification. And that's me.
And a little bit about me. I am still a specialist with the Patents Project and a licensed and certified speech language pathologist. And my background is I am not someone who is very good at math, so I use spreadsheets to help me out quite a bit, and really enjoy creating those no-cost data project consultations for folks. And like I said, that's how Clive and I met and helped develop this tool. So of course, Patents, we're still promoting achievement through technology and instruction for all students, supporting those Indiana public schools and creating and sustaining an equitable learning environment. I'm not going to spend too long on this page. I just want to point out that our AT Lending Library is open and doing a great business this time of year, as well as our trainings and virtual office hours. This training is going to be recorded, and we're hoping to be able to share it via YouTube, and so that can be on demand if you want your colleagues to be able to watch it. But if anything you see on that training calendar, if that's not at a time that works for you, reach out to that specialist and let them know a time that does, or perhaps we have a recording hidden up our sleeves. We want to make sure that those resources get to you. This slide I always have to have on every presentation. And what I want to say about this, if this is the visual representation of the Every Student Succeeds Act, what we're doing here today is being able to collaborate more effectively with our colleagues and not spend so much time tabulating and counting and doing all these things, letting the tools and technology help support our work so that we can focus on all these other really important things. So just leveraging technology so our students have access and have equitable access to the instruction assessment and more time for collaboration and relationships. People always ask, are we going to get the slides? Absolutely. And will this be recorded and shared? Yes. Questions, feel free to pop in questions in the chat box whenever you would like, but we're going to have like 2 basic sections or 3 basic sections, and we'll stop and make sure that we answer all those questions before moving on. So feel free to ask whenever you want in the chat, or when we stop for questions, if you want to unmute and ask your question there, that would be helpful. Our agenda, we're going to go over very briefly basic forms and sheets as it relates to this tool that we developed. So again, if you're using Google Suite, this will be available to you and you're going to get a copy, so it's owned by you and you can tweak it and add to it and do whatever you like to it. We're going to talk about individualizing this for every student, so adding meaningful questions to identify a cause, using pivot tables. I feel like people are a little scared of pivot tables, and you shouldn't be. They're amazing and super easy. There's nothing you can do wrong with pivot tables. And then using other tools and strategies to get a clear picture. Third, we're going to look at supporting staff to act on that data. So that was a clear theme for a lot of you. Struggle with getting the data, and then struggle with getting other folks collaborating with you and making sure that data got to the people who needed it. And then, of course, we'll end with questions. And then finally, that evaluation. That evaluation is so important to us, and we appreciate you filling that out. So I am going to give you an example sheet of something that's already filled out. I'm going to pop this in the chat box. You don't have to open this. If you're on a phone, if you're on a situation where like, oh, I don't want to open up another tab, don't worry about it. You don't have to, but you certainly can if you want. It'll force you to make a copy of Final Call demo data. So you can kind of see on the backside what this looks like. I'm going to apologize for right off the top, it does not, this demo data does not have a form connected to it. The copy of the tool that you're going to get that's blank that you can own and do whatever you want to will, but I wanted to show you what this looked like with information attached to it. So I'm going to make this a little bigger. I know that you can't necessarily read that. The text is pretty small. So this is Clive's brainchild. This is what Clive was working on. So correct me if I'm wrong. Before you moved to this for your students, you had a sheet that people would check off, and you were spending hours tabulating that?
Well, there would be writing notes in there and various information like this, but they had to do it by hand. And they had choices to choose from: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10. So in each box, there was a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and they put the numbers in so make it easier for them. And so I met Jessica at one of these initial behavior things, and I said, Jessica, I need to talk to you. I need to invent something that's not so much work for me after they collect all data, but one that they can just fill in and send. Hence this response form that they all check box 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different names, text box, and just send. And that was just a way more easy because, as she says, this data collection just collects everything there for you. You get the name of the person that sent it, the name of the children that was involved. This is the advanced one that we've got now. So we know exactly who was there at that moment when the incident occurred. And so that gives you a much bigger, better picture of what's going on, because the adults needs to be part of this, because the intervention or the issue may be true, the fact that they did something or said something or acted in a certain way as a trigger for that young person. So it's been really, really good for me over the past year or so. and we've just developed it even more since then. This is the advanced one that we've come up with.
So the assistants and staff members that Clive works with, this is what they see. So they're just filling out their name. When did this occur? And like you said, check, check, check. And when you get this tool, you will be able to edit all of this, put in things that make sense for that student. Personalization, I think, was really important to us, or what I heard from Clive, especially this past year. You got to tweak it for every student, right?
Yeah, yes, we do. Because I mean, every child is different. They're in different levels of classes as well in terms of even the day for some students is different. So that needs to be incorporated. So reflecting that individual students in terms of their day and how things and what the issues are for them individually again.
Mm-hmm. And the nice thing is that personalization, if Clive decides to add a new context, he knows, the students in middle school and there's, these sorts of classes or that student change classes, that change is pushed out to all the staff members immediately. There's no copying that you need to do, no sending them an extra email. It's just automatically there. So there are tools and supports embedded within the tool. I'll show you in the tab so that staff members, when they get this behavior form for a student, they can save it to their phone, they can save it to a tablet and just bring it up kind of like an app and just immediately fill it out. And
it's for those of you who's worked with behavior, it's antecedents, context, antecedents, behavior, and consequences. And those are the basic information that we're looking for so the context will be the class that they're in or what they're doing at that time. What was the trigger? What happened just before the behavior occurred? And then what was consequences given? Just focusing on that aspect of it.
So that's the meat and potatoes of what you get. But of course, if you have a different question that you want to ask, my background, I specialize mostly in augmentative and alternative communication. If you want to add another question in here, you can just hit that add a question button and write whatever it is that you want. Again, individualizing for what your caseload needs or what that student needs. So also, go ahead.
I was going to add, we've got the time of day in here as well, which populates again as to, is it a morning, is it an afternoon, and gives you an idea when the behaviors are occurring, which is really great as well.
And like Clive had said before, when it was paper-based, he was getting some data, but not nearly the amount and not nearly as organized as this.
Yeah, nowhere near.
So what you see down here at the bottom, there are many, many tabs, and I tried to color coordinate them so that you could kind of see what went where. This first tab, form response 3, is every single response that comes in through that form. It's going to have a timestamp, so you know exactly when that came in, the staff name, when did it occur, and those ABC data, antecedent behavior, context, and consequences data. So room for notes. And then there were 2 other questions that Clive found really helpful for his caseload. So the name of the adults or students involved and the interaction right before that behavior. Again, you can delete them or add as many as you want, make it personal for your situation. Then you have a tab called paste entries here. And this is really where when we figured out what needed to change or what was really important, sometimes you don't want to look at everything from the beginning of time. Sometimes you only want to look at things from first quarter or things that were submitted by a certain staff member. So what you can do is copy and paste exactly what it is that you want to look at. Going to, just because this is a demo and I wanted to show you a bunch of data, I'm going to copy everything and go over to paste entries here and paste it. So it's sort of like, I think of it as like a microscope. You can focus in on what it is that you want to focus in on and paste entries here. Again, if I only wanted to look at things that were in ELA, I would just copy and paste over only those situations, but I'm just going to paste over everything because you'll start to see the benefit of this. We have 2 different incidence calculators. Those of you who have been using this tool from 2 years ago, it came with an incidence calculator. The tricky part of this incidence calculator is you could select multiple things. So you could say, there were 3 antecedents if you wanted to, and it would divide those out, which isn't something that sheets can do naturally. So that's where this incidence calculator comes in. So you can see, okay, just eyeballing, you see some patterns of behavior over here, context in ELA and math quite a bit. But the tricky part was if you allowed your team members to put in an other into this. So they got to fill out whatever it is, something that you didn't anticipate on the form. The incidence calculator was not smart enough, or this original incidence calculator wasn't smart enough to know, oh, someone got creative and put in something we weren't expecting. You had to do that by hand. That's the way the old tool worked. We were able to give you an incidence calculator based in pivot charts that is smart enough to know as soon as somebody puts in something unique into that other box, it'll start calculating that as well. I would say it just depends on your situation, depends on your staff members, whether that's helpful or not, because you'll start getting things like
It was like Lisa. Sounds like Lisa thought it was a fantastic update.
I know, right? I'm hoping it is. Want to give you some flexibility. So we gave you both, just depending on your situation. But you might get some things like was angry as a behavior. Well, that's not a behavior, that's an emotion. What is the behavior that you saw that made you think that he was angry? So some of your staff members might really struggle with being able to quantify and capture that information in a way that's helpful. So some of you might give them the option of having another, and some of you may not. But wanted to give you that option, especially because there are things that you may not anticipate that you want to be able to capture and look at. So automatic incidence calculator, all of these tabs that I'm going to cover are based on this paste entries here tab, that red tab. Whatever you put in there, it will automatically create all these things. So we go into pie charts. I know you guys love these pie charts. I love them too. So we have them for all of those pieces. And let's say you love this pie chart and you want to use it. Click on any of those pie charts, click those three little dots, and you can copy that pie chart, put it in a report, email it to someone, add it to a presentation. The other nice thing is you can copy this, and if you put it in a presentation or a report, it will stay the way that it is, but you can also set it up so that you can force it to refresh and reflect what's on the incidence calculator at any point in time, so long as you keep that within the Google suite of options. So that can be a really nice way if you have a standard report and you want to, update that student's report in 6 months. You don't have to grab a whole new pie chart. You can reuse this and just say, grab the data that's in there now. So it's all nice and connected. The rest of these, I believe all of them, are pivot tables, and we're going to cover pivot tables in a second. Link for the form, I only see a link for the data spreadsheet. The blank form I'm going to share at the end when you all fill out your evaluation. So I'm holding it hostage. You're all going to get it. Everyone's going to get it. But I do need you to fill out that evaluation at the end, and you will get all the goodies. So give me an evaluation, the evaluation I earned, and you will get all the goodies. I hope that's fair. All right. So pivot tables, I'm going to X out of here. You have a ton of pivot tables based on a variety of things. So if you want to see by hour, and this is military time, Clive, I think something kind of jumps out at you on this one.
Yeah, I think the 13 particularly, because you can see 13, which is 1 o'clock. That's a time when there was a lot of issues going on for this young person. So straight away, I take a look at that and see exactly what that's comprised of. And it's about arguing with adults too, and disrespectful to staff and students. So that those numbers, when they are such high, they jump out to me more so, because this is usually for over a period of time, depending on how long it is. So I always look at those high numbers first and see what's going on.
We have another pivot table that is set up by month.
Yeah.
Again,
which is good, is in February. And I always think sometimes if you work with young people and the winter months, there's more behaviors happening. It may be that seasonal effect, for all we know, in terms of for that young person. People heard of seasonal effect disorder, which is something that affects you in the wintertime when you're indoors more, you're not able to go out and so on. So you're a bit more not so happy, should we say, because you can't go out and do stuff. So that's also another area that I sometimes see for the young persons during those winter months, like January, February, sometimes Christmas, over Christmas as well.
The rest of these are just looking at that ABC data and their relationships. And all of these are just looking at, okay, what's the relationship between these behaviors and the month? What are the relationship between, and this one's kind of lengthy because there's a lot of different antecedents. So it's a little hard. Maybe this one for this particular student doesn't make as much sense because we have a lot of one counts because there's a variety of behaviors being documented. This one is set up by days of the week. Close this up so you can see that a little bit more. So again, you can see Monday, Tuesday, beginning of the week, a lot more behaviors. And again, you start noticing patterns. And if we can notice patterns, if it's predictable, it might be preventable, right?
One of the things that I try and do when we see patterns like this, we get together a team meeting between the people involved and decide to make adjustments to that person's day, see what works, see if those numbers decline, if they continue to go on. So they're a good way of, every month we're going to meet monthly to looking at the data, see if there's anything there. If there's nothing there for us to look at changing, because things are working, that's great. But if there is things there for us to look at and make some adjustments, that helps as well. I'll also say that some of these kids I've been working with 3 years now, and they're in their like third year of this data collection. And some, things are getting less, but usually at the beginning when things are new is when we ever go. Once we've got into the swing of the data and we get the kids, the things that's going on, we get to sort of like less incidents of those because we're doing something that's affecting that, making it less. It then works really well.
The nice thing about the link that I'm going to get you, that copy of the template form, whenever you go back to this link, you will always get the newest version. So once you make a copy, you're going to get the copy that's available. Sometimes, and I try to keep a change log as far as, tiny little things that we change. So for example, in paste entries here, we have 2 columns that were added. People said that they really liked knowing, just eyeballing, what day of the week was it and did it happen in the AM or PM? And that gave us some good information. But sometimes people will accidentally delete that. And so we're able to protect it so you didn't accidentally delete the formula in there. So that's nothing that you have to do. That just happens automatically. So again, that advanced template that's available, it just has more questions, more pivot tables, and that 2 different incidence calculators to suit your need. And essentially what we just wanted to give you were more indicators of behavior, more options to take a look at data to assist you and your team. But we also want to make sure that you know how to edit that and create more things that would be helpful. One of those big things that I keep teaching people are pivot tables. It's not something that I think a lot of people are comfortable with or familiar with, but this is a really easy way to look at any amount of data that you're getting in a spreadsheet. Chances are you want to look at it in a pivot table. So one of the first things we do is you can highlight by clicking this box over here. We are going to insert a pivot table. It is my recommendation would be in almost all situations, just make it a new sheet. And I'm going to say, great. Now, the nice thing is with pivot tables, there's nothing you can do to break this. It is just grabbing these columns and bringing it over and looking at how does this relate to that. So for example, if I wanted to see, we don't have one related to staff name. Maybe I wanted to look and see, is, a certain staff member bringing in more referrals or more incidents of behavior than others. So again, I just grabbed staff name and then under rows. And then I grab staff name again under values, and it is smart enough generally to know what might be a good option. Count A just means count all, so count every single instance that a staff member submitted something. So you can see here, Minnie Mouse has submitted 28 times, while Donald Duck has only submitted once. Maybe that's reflective of his schedule. Maybe there's some staff training that needs to occur. Maybe there's some support that needs to happen with Minnie Mouse. Maybe she's seeing more maladaptive behaviors, more struggle in the classroom, and we need to support her. So again, really easy to set this up. Maybe I want to look at, okay, these staff members are the ones submitting, but I want to know what context this is happening. So again, I just grabbed that context bubble, drag it under rows, and now it's going to divide it out by each person. I can see Minnie Mouse is in a whole lot of areas. It's not just one area. Well, Mickey Mouse, it's just math and MTSS. So lots of different ways that you can use this to, again, that microscope idea. How do I want to use that data? How can I best show my team members the patterns and what is actually going on to help leverage those conversations and collaboration? For pivot tables, I wanted to point out we're giving you written instructions for creating and editing and grouping those pivot tables, as well as a video tutorial for pivot tables. We didn't want to make this a pivot table presentation, but we wanted to give you those things as you go back and create your own pivot tables for your needs. I think we wanted to stop here before Clive jumps into this. Do you have any questions about the form and the tool? You're welcome. All right, Clive.
So the first part that I wanted to talk about was during using these data about the students' skills learnt. One of the things I think the students get out of this is the fact that when these behaviors occur, they need to stop, think, and sometimes make choices. Choice to me is a good thing to give to the young people, because a lot of young people feels like they have some control, they want to have some control over the situation when it happens. So giving a choice rather than giving a yes or no, or you can only do this or that, right, is really important. So I'll only give them two ideas to choose from, as opposed to two things they can choose from when something is happening or something has occurred. I also, one of my students that I had and I've worked with now, and he's in his third year. In fact, he's one of the ones we started with. I don't spend as much time with him now. And one thing he does, in the middle of the day, he has a nap for about 45 minutes. And we learned that, right, this nap makes him a different person on the afternoon. Like maybe that home he's not getting enough sleep, but it really, really makes him a better person, a better young person. No, less issues, way less issues than before, just with this nap for 45 minutes during the day. That's all around students. Another one of the students had difficulties getting along with peers, especially when there was conflict going on. And I think what we learned with that situation, what the young person came from, was that the conflict isn't necessarily is about the way you, as being the person himself, right, attitude towards these others. In a sense, right, we had to work out the peer relationships that he had and how differently he can actually involve himself in those discussions, because it was for his point of view, it was all about me as opposed to the other students, and it's a shared thing when you're in relationships or in friendships with his peers. So getting him to understand that and actually modeling that and doing that for him so he understood helped him to have much more better relationships with his friends. One of the things that I did a lot with him was also talk through things, not only me, but he's actually a class teacher, and talking to him about the event, what happened, and what he could have done better. And sometimes asking him what he thinks could have done differently or done better. And that was a learning process for him, because obviously nobody had time or spent time doing that with the young person and person that I work with. So that was really important. And that continues now with the school, with the assistants, or if an incident occurs, there's a learning to be had from that situation for him as a young person, because of his disability and because of the way in which he communicates or not communicate with others. One of the things that was happening as well with this young person, actually two young people, is that because of the behavior, obviously academic skills was not where it should be. And so now he's able to catch up, and he's not got a situation where he's behind everybody else. And that takes a lot of stress off the young person as well, because the behaviors is not interfering as much with his regular day. And so he's able to work and focus and then do a lot better. So there's a lot of things that I've learned, the students have learned from the process and from the data that's helped them to be better students and not have so much incidents go on. I think always when there's a transition to a new class, there are new things to learn. And for the teachers to understand this young person more is very, very useful for them to make sure that the sort of behaviors doesn't increase because it's a different class or a different day that the person has to go through. And again, that nap, I couldn't believe, but the nap for 45 minutes in a day just made this kid a different person altogether. He was so tired. Skills. One of the things that I use a lot is in terms of redirection of a young person. When we think about redirection, we think about it, I think about it in ways like making that person redirected from the focus they have right then, when they're in the moment, to something completely different, which then takes their mind away from whatever issue is happening at the time. So, for example, getting a young person to run an errand, do something they enjoy, tickle their curiosity with a question that they were not expecting to ask. Like, what do you find? Taking away that in the moment thinking, which is the anger and the outburst, and trying to switch it or flick his brain to something different, or her brain to something different, is also can be a useful tool. I'm not saying it happens to everybody, but some kids, you can do that as well. Get them talking about something that they enjoy doing. You told me like to go fishing. You go fishing the weekend, or did you go hang out with your friends the weekend? Just to change the subject, to get them down from that state of being high or being angry or being upset or whatever, to something that's going to flip their brain in order for them to actually think about something perhaps more positive and what they do well. So that's what those ideas are. The redirection part is not always about redirecting in terms of work, but also redirecting something off what they're actually issues they're actually having at that time onto something else that's positive. So their brain flips over to that, and then they're able to calm down and come back and be involved and continue to work on what they're working on. Relaxation techniques. I'm sure some of you guys know about relaxation techniques. For this young person, I said it was taking a nap. For others, sometimes it's having a room that he can go to as well. This other young person like to darken the room so that he can be relaxed, because the lights bother him in some of the classrooms. And so after so long in that classroom, right, he's getting very upset by the lights. So he goes in a dark room, sits in there, relaxes for a short period of time, and then goes back to class and carry on. Sometimes it's about something they want to do physical, like go for a walk. Sometimes recess is good for a young person. Sometimes additional recess, maybe on 5 or 10 minutes. Maybe you say it was because they need to have that movement. They need to have that time to let out what I need to let out before going back in the classroom. Drawing is a good one as well for relaxation. And a lot of students, some students self-talk, but self-talk in a positive way, so they can help themselves come down from a situation. I know you all know breathing exercises. That's something that's a technique a lot of people use to help them to relax. And these two young persons I'm talking about, they used all these techniques at some time or not to help them calm themselves down in the classroom. There's one of my young person who likes to draw. He's very, I don't understand it, but he does, in terms of drawings that are like two-dimensional. And he really likes to work at that to calm himself down, because then he can focus on that and forget about all the things that's going on. He's only a fifth grader, but he's really, really, really smart.
Clive, I wanted to add to that, because you've been working with them and using this form to help add that. I love the fact that, these relaxation techniques are taught while they're calm, but being able to predict, 1 p.m. is a really hard time. So let's make sure we get that nap in before 1 p.m. happens. What a great tool to kind of leverage these things and know, like, okay, is it working? And when do we need to introduce these, or when is a good time to schedule a relaxation break or a sensory break?
This is the one that's interesting and has been, I've noticed over time. I'm kind of working with most of the same teachers over time. There are new teachers that come along, and I will talk to them about the communication tool and so on when some young person in their classroom needs that help. But I was always, since working over here, looking at the communication from the teacher to the students and how that affect them. I'm not trying to decry teachers or anything, but we're all different and we all have different ways of doing things. But like sometimes that loud and harsh tone of voice can be a trigger for a young person. It really can, and I've seen it in action in classes sometimes. And also sometimes that voice is like an ordering voice, like I'm ordering to do this, this, and this. And for some students whose maybe parenting style they had is not that way, then they're going to challenge that because they're not used to it. So that's another thing to think about as well when it comes to the communication by staff. Discouraging, yeah, you need to try harder, things like that. Encouragement is not I need to try it. Encouragement would be, right, I see that's hard for you. So how can we help you to get this and to understand it better? A very different style and different way of approaching. In terms of when you're working with children, you know, towering over children and getting too close to them sometimes can be, to them, right, very problematic, rather than getting down level, at their level, kneeling down if you need to next to them, and give them some space to say or listen to what you have to say as well. Reprimanding in front of your classroom, a lot of young people now don't want to be told in front of their friends and that they're doing something wrong or whatever, because afterwards, right, they feel like demeaned by it as a young person. And so sometimes a private conversation to the side or on their own is probably more helpful in situations than having the reprimanding style that I have sometimes from some staff. I have to say that sometimes communicating with staff depends on how well you know them, depending on how well they trust you in what you're saying and what you're doing. So I'm not saying this for everybody. It's just for those that you feel you can have that relationship with in terms of helping them. Sometimes teachers are having a bad day. And if you go into that room enough and observe enough, you can tell that this is not the usual way that they're doing their work and so on. And just a quiet word to the side may be helpful for that person if you know them well. And my rule of thumb is always about this, treat everyone equally, build a relationship with every student. That's really, really important. 10 minutes for the first 5 and 10 days in school for the young person and for the whole group of the class. It's good for the whole group, not for the young person who's got issues maybe, who feel have issues, but for everybody, for the teacher to be able to relate better to that student and understand what's going on for them, probably outside of school as well. And teaching everyone the same way, the universal design, which Jessica's going to talk more about.
Yeah, so as Clive was sharing all of these tidbits, or as we were going through student cases, and it just, when he said, well, you can't teach everyone the same way, you got to individualize the data collection just like you need to individualize your instruction. I'm like, oh, you mean UDL? And so Universal Design for Learning, making sure from the beginning you're thinking about giving students multiple ways to respond, to interact with what you have. That's just good teaching, but it's absolutely aligned with that evidence base of universal design for learning, which I thought was just a fantastic connection between what we're doing here.
The next one is about the teacher and the super teacher. And I have to say, right, I coach as well. So I coach outside of school as well. And one of the things I learned is that it's okay to make a mistake. Sometimes do it on purpose so that they know that you're a human. You're not like a superhuman person or a super teacher, because none of us are perfect if we really look at ourselves. So that's a good thing to do sometimes, because kids say, oh, you never do that. Why do you do that? And he's thinking, oh, well, we mess up sometimes just like you do. And so the kids realize you're as human as they are. So preventing power struggles, that's another thing that the staff that I was working with needed to look at, needed to do. Giving choices is a good one, always, and choices that they will enjoy, because young people like to have some power over the situation that they're in, some control over what they're doing. So really giving choices is always a good option, and usually 2 choices they can choose, and they know that is their choice then, as opposed to we telling them what to do. The other thing is that, right, we have a lot of young people now who needs time to process things. And so the processing part is really, really important, because they don't want to be rushed, want to be pushed, because they're not going to feel that way. And you can say, I'll come back to you in a minute if you need more time. And don't forget to come back to them, right, if you do that. So they need a chance to talk. And also, if they need to, you can repeat the question. That's not an issue at all. So power struggles sometimes between teachers and students is not a good thing. So staff development questions. So one of the things that I do is having our meetings talk about how we use this data, what is working, what is not working. Do we need to make any changes, make anything to reflect for this young person? Then we talk to the teacher that's included in the meeting. Is there anything that I need to do? The teacher will say that in my practice and what I'm doing to make sure that this young person is getting clear understanding. And so that's part of our work as well, is working with the teachers, with the students, to make sure they understand. But I heard that. What was that question? Just a question in the chat box popped up.
Oh, I just said we'd like to hear your answers to this question as well as if you'd like to share.
Okay.
Clive, I know when you take information from this, you are grabbing those pie charts and then
Yeah.
often printing off some of these pivot tables. Is that right?
I've got an interval here in the class. They're passing periods. So there's a
Oh,
noise going on in my
oh
room.
no, the music is playing.
That's the music playing in the background again. It's a passing period. And I cannot turn it down. So I have to listen to it.
Luckily, at least for me, it sounds very, very tinny and very soft. But I'm sure it's very loud for you. So can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Just a few minutes.
So what I had noticed when that question about how are you using the data to inform the ways you're working with students, reflecting on your own practice, you had mentioned, those conversations that you have with staff members. When you're bringing data to them, how do you bring this information to them to have those conversations?
But what I normally do is break it down into the main issues, and I'd use the ABC, saying this is what's happening. This is how many times it occurred. So I give them a small breakdown and look at how can we do something different in the classroom. If it's happening at a certain time of day, we focus on that time and see what was that person's class time like. Do we need to give him something else in here to lessen that? For example, sometimes we've decided that it's time for him to maybe go to a resource room to have a little break in that session, because academically, if he's doing okay, why not? Rather have him doing what he's supposed to do with that small break there, additional break in there. And one of the things that happens sometimes, kids go have a lot of recess times and so on. Sometimes the recess time pipe them up to come back into the classroom. So maybe they don't need to come back into the classroom straight away, or maybe they go somewhere else for some personal recess time. So in that moment with everybody else getting all amped up to come back into the classroom, and they can't calm down like everybody else. So it really depends on what the data is showing about their behavior and what times it is and so on.
So what I heard you say is to facilitate those conversations about reflecting on practice, you're not sharing this entire tool with them.
No,
You're grabbing
no,
small pieces to help
yeah,
facilitate that conversation.
yeah. If I see something that we need to meet and talk about in that monthly meeting, that's what we talk about. And slowly but surely we find that, we're all good. We're good. No need for, after a while, after a period of time, you find that things are going okay. Things are not perfect, but it's way better than it was when we started this process. Like I said, I have the two students I'm talking about in here now, right? This is their third year. And I don't really get many paperwork on those young people. It's more the newer ones that's in the system that I'm getting information about and questions about, because the teachers have all got into the mood and know about it. When they transfer from one teacher to another, they're aware of, because we've got a lot of data to share from the past, what's worked and what hasn't worked. So it makes a smoother transition for that person, but also the teacher are aware as well of the tools and what things to do because of the meetings that we've had.
And says, I love the question about reflecting on teaching practice. It opens doors and creates connections. I agree. Also wanted to point out, as we know, a lot of our students are struggling with mental health issues. A lot of the adults are struggling with mental health issues. So as we're creating those connections with our staff members, make sure that you're aware and sharing information about your employee assistance program. Almost every school district and cooperative in Indiana has one of these, includes free or greatly reduced counseling services, as well as Be Well Indiana, which is free resources for individuals, family, and youth. Like we skipped something. Oh, here we go. So we wanted to pause there. We brought a few more questions that you had submitted, or sort of comments when you registered, that we wanted to focus on, but I wanted to make sure before we transition to those, are there any burning questions about what we covered? And we'll kind of jump on and share some resources based on the information you had shared before. Yes, Anne.
I have a comment going back to talking about the reflection, and you were talking about the mental health issues for teachers and students, but a lot of times too, even as adults, we're afraid to be vulnerable. And so by making this safe for the entire group to talk about, it opens up that vulnerability, and in addition to creating those connections, but can create those deeper connections that say, Jessica says something that maybe you were a little afraid to say, and I might pipe up and say, oh my gosh, I had the same thought. I was afraid to say it. And then you're starting to bridge some of those gaps that maybe others have. But at the same time, your vulnerability has tapped into my vulnerability, and now I feel safer in sharing that issue, what question, whatever it might be. So I think that the reflection piece and the question, how are you using the data, is great. I don't work directly with students. I work with the teachers and haven't started that yet this school year directly. So I can't answer the first one, but number two is something I do very, very frequently with the adults that I work with.
So I was going to add that a lot of teachers that I work with, they've known me for a while. And if I feel I can say something now because of the relationship I've built up, I say something. And that's really, really good because you know that person is open to personal development, personal reflection in terms of their teaching style and what's going on.
So Clive, this was a main theme in the participants. What skills would you teach staff that are struggling with a student with aggressive behaviors? Aggressive behavior is probably number one answer on that form. What behaviors or concerns or trends you're saying?
Well, those are the things that's in the handout that we have here. First of all, you all know and should have all heard of the tiered interventions that we use, depending on whether somebody's a tier 1, a tier 2, or tier 3. I'm guessing that people have used that. At least we use that here in the co-op that we're in right now to look at what support, what help, and so on we can do for the young person involved. But we're looking at what we can do to help staff and with students with challenging behaviors. The next sheet talks about that aspect more. So there's a question about the teen intervention. It's I think it's part of the presentation, is it not? Somebody just asked.
Yes, another piece of that hostage situation. So you're going to get copies of Clive's forms that you see here in that presentation.
Okay. So let's go back to the beginning. I think we passed the first part of it. One of the things I tried to do was put on one-on-one strategy with students. A strategy to use students in different situations, not just the general things that I've said to people that I've used and has worked for me. Giving choices is 1, 2, or 3 max. Give time to respond. We've talked about a little bit. General strategies is there as well. Strengthen their preferences, know what they are, and use those as rewards or things that they can do. Talking about their lives and what's going on, ask them in the morning, how was your weekend? General things like that is very, very helpful because they feel then you're more than just a teacher. You really care and understand. I want to know what their situation is like. Some of those other things are on that 3-tiered system, but this second section is where some of the things that I've used. Being aware of your own body language and what your body is saying, and it's non-threatening to a young person, that can also be an issue. Making good eye contact with a young person. Sometimes, kids with certain labels or disabilities are not going to give you eye contact. So there's no need to confront that. A lot of teachers will say to a young person, look at me when I'm talking to you, so on, right? That child may have an issue where they can't steer you in the eye because it's not something that they do, and it's very difficult for them. So that should not be something that we're doing, because that can be a trigger as opposed to anything else. Sometimes in terms of your movement across the room, some people become very sharp or some people become very nice and calm. The calm is the best way to be when you're moving around a classroom and so on. And shouting and making a lot of noise is sometimes may affect the young person in that room that just can't take that as well. So that's another method or thing to look at, particularly from maybe the teaching staff or the teaching style. Set clear expectations. One of the things I see in the classes that we have here, the students and the teachers at the beginning of the year talk about what the behavior expectation is in the classroom. And they're right, they all go through it and they agree, and it's on that classroom all the time for young people to see. So when something does happen, they can draw their attention to it and say, didn't we agree this? But we was going to do this and not that. So those sort of things are very good tools as well for everybody in the classroom, because they all sign up to it, if you like. build rapport and good understanding. Identify the triggers and the warning signs, and sometimes you may have to intervene in situations way before things get escalated. So it's good to respond to that before it gets that bad if you're aware of the signs. Avoid negative talk to some of these young persons, because sometimes negative talk is a trigger for them. Do not assume, make judgments. I'm sure some of you have been in the lunch rooms with staff and so on, and some of the staff display those negative talk or assumptions about young kids, which I'm sure, I'm not saying that everybody does this, I'm just saying, sure, that sometimes impact the way they react to that young person in situations. So again, try to individual also talk to us about negative talk. That sometimes is part of the trigger for a young person. Don't assume, sometimes I'll make judgments. And that's again the self-reflection part. My background is a lot of social work and working with children and families. And I've learned that self-reflection is really, really good at the end of your day. You say just on a day, can you think of 3 things you've done really good today and 3 things that you feel you need to work on? It won't take more than a couple of minutes, but just to see just a little bit of self-reflection. And also with young people, avoid power struggles and redirections, and try to redirect the brain as well is really, really important. Because those young people are looking for some way of having some control over their lives. They may have it at home, school is maybe one place they can, and so sometimes allowing them to have that control in a positive way is really, really important. And then I've got some other controlling outbursts at the bottom. Set clear expectation, build rapport with the young person, and be understanding. Some of this data collection will let you identify the triggers and the warning signs. Be very encouraging at all times as you can be. I'm working with my soccer team right now, and I got a girl team and the boys team, and I'm trying to make sure that I give lots of positives, more so than the arguing, the screaming, and the shouting. And I have another colleague who works with us as a team, and she does a lot of the therapeutical side of things. And she's always saying to me, come on, gotta remember positives, gotta remember positives. And that's a really, really good thing, because the girls and the boys do better. The more positives, and the better they work, the better they play. So they don't have to be in special ed to have this. Everybody needs to think about this. More positives and more encouragement goes a long way. And again, avoid power struggles when you're managing problems.
One of the next questions was around staff members kind of struggling with the situation. So how do you handle a situation when it's the staff member's behavior that is the cause of the student's challenging reaction? That's an uncomfortable conversation.
Yeah. I suppose I'm in a different position where I've been worked in the same school corporation for 15 years, but I have no issue in discussing those issues with somebody if it arises. And I don't go in and say you're doing anything wrong. I'm saying, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? So I'm throwing it to them, and they'll come out and say, oh, sometimes I do that. I said, do you? Tell me about it. And they will then tell us and tell themselves and realize themselves about what they're doing and what they've been doing and how it affects. And I'll say, does that affect so-and-so or anybody else that you work with? So I'm being very naive in my interaction with that person, showing them that, right, I'm just trying to erase it for you to look at. I'm not telling you have to, in a way that's not what's the word? Not aggressive or confrontational. It's more about us having a conversation and just talking, because I know you want to do well for these children. I know you're a really good teacher with these kids. It's just sometimes blah, blah, blah. So I do in that way where I'm going in. But like I said, I do have a longer relationship. I'm not sure what everybody's relationship is with the people that they're working with. So it may have to take a different stance when it comes to that. I think also the data gives you a way in to talk to those individuals as well in the classrooms about what's going on, because you're saying, this is what's happening. This is what the trigger is. The teacher and the assistants are reporting the instances. So they're making that data for you to look at. If the data says it, well, we need to do something about it. So in a group, if for some reason there's a trigger in terms of what the teacher is saying, or a particular subject the teacher is saying is a trigger, then we have to look at a different way of presenting that. So it's not a trigger anymore. So the actual data sometimes give you a way in with the person, with the teacher you're talking with or working with, in order to do some change. So maybe, for example, teacher may say, well, you want to do this room or change this in a room. Make sure they have like a space with a tape around it so they need to stay in there to help you and to help them instead of so many distractions and so many issues going on. So physical boundaries are sometimes good. What about you behave expectations early in the classroom? Do you have one? Maybe you want to have one so that at least everyone in the classroom agrees with it. So you give them ideas to help them as opposed to coming and telling them what to do. You're giving them ideas of what they could do in order to change the environment and the way in which that classroom works or operates on a daily basis. I think also because I meet regularly on these data collections with the staff once a month, that's a good thing as well because everybody's involved in that. Everybody's able to communicate and to contribute and say things and say what they think. And also if there is something that they see, they're more inclined to want to do something about it if it's going to help them in their classroom. So those regular meetings and communications are really, really important.
I think that was the last question, which we're exactly on time. Just want to remind you, we're able to do all these things in our relationship with the Indiana Resource Network. So InSource, IP Resource Center, and more. Please keep that, save the date for our Access to Education Conference and the evaluation that I'm going to pop into the chat box right now. I know a lot of you are wanting all of those resources, and I would love to get those to you. Those of you who are watching the recording, please fill out that evaluation that I'm going to put on the screen right there. So that tinyurl.com/patentspgp, or you can scan that QR code with your phone. Those of you who are attending live, that's the link also in there as well. That evaluation, I am going to, those of you who are in the live session, I'm going to grab all the email addresses that you put in that evaluation and send you the copy of that form, the presentation that you have here today, as well as Clive's documents that he shared with us. Thank you so much for making that available for us, Clive. All of that stuff free for you to use and edit and make your own. Those of you who are watching the recording, you need to fill out the evaluation and then email me at jconrad@patentsproject.org. So that I know that you filled out the evaluation. So thank you so much for that evaluation. And that will also get you into a raffle for a free ticket to Access to Ed this year, which I think is like a $250 value. So fingers crossed, I hope you get it. And your evaluation also is the best way that we can continue doing these things for free for our Indiana public schools. If you have any questions for Clive or Thank you so much, Clive, for doing this. He's doing this out of the kindness of his heart during his very busy school day. So thank you so much for all of your work and support in this. Really appreciate it. And lots of kudos in the chat box for you.
Thank you, guys. Just trying to help. The more of us that's helping, the more these young people are going to have it's like a better situation in the classroom and in school.
Go ahead and stop.